Okay. Good afternoon. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet as well. And again today, if there are questions from the internet, some of them will be addressed. Let's go right into the book. And actually, we will probably only read the first paragraph and use it as a springboard. Would you do the honors?
Perception always involves some misuse of mind because it brings the mind into areas of uncertainty. The mind is very active. When it chooses to be separated, it chooses to perceive. Until then, it wills only to know. Afterwards, it can only choose ambiguously. And the only way out of ambiguity is clear perception. The mind returns to its proper function only when it wills to know. This places it in the service of spirit, because it is from spirit that it derives its whole power to make or create. Even in miscreation, the mind is affirming its source, or it would merely cease to be. This is impossible because the mind belongs to spirit, which God created, and which is therefore eternal.
Perhaps the most important sentence in there says, "But it could not entirely separate itself from spirit, because it is from spirit that it derives its whole power to make or create." And let's be sure we understand the distinction between make and create. Last week I suggested that the word up should be added to make up, to make up something, an imagination. To make is what the mind does when it has separated itself from the Father and experiences or seems to experience itself as independent. Then it makes things, but the making doesn't constitute creation. Now the point is that not a single one of you has ever stopped being the direct expression of God. Your apparent capacity to believe yourself to be independent, to be unrelated to God, by virtue of being at the end of a chain of evolution that started with a big bang, and all you are is the result of a joining of a sperm and an egg. That is a made-up view of yourselves, and everything you do on that basis constitutes a making of things, and as I said, does not constitute creation at all. Now, it is still the Son of God making things, as opposed to the Son of God creating things. You have not become an ego. You have not become what you think you are. And any power you have to draw a breath as a human being, separate from God, is derived from the fact that at this very moment you are the Son of God, the direct expression of God, God embodied. This is very important for you to understand, because it's in this way that you can understand what I mean when I say you're having a dream on a grassy knoll in the kingdom of heaven. At this moment, you are exactly as you were created by the Father. This is why an ego does not have to refine its soul to get back home. You're already at home you're already the Son of God, pretending you're not, and believing the pretension. If that's clear to you, your awakening will be much simpler. Even in miscreation, the mind is affirming its capital S source. You see that? Right now, you are, no matter how you see yourself, affirming and being the expression of God, but you're doing it unconsciously. And as a result of doing it unconsciously, you're goofing up all over the place. You are miscreating, and you are misunderstanding creation. The mortal dream of existence is what you experience when you make of the kingdom of heaven something other than it is in your mind, and then believe and devote yourself to your belief. But it's still the Son of God, confronted with and seeing the kingdom of heaven with all the power and all of the glory of your divine being, active, but occurring unknown to you, while you are devoted to your perception of it all, period. The experience is an uneasy experience. It is an unpleasant experience. It's an experience in which there are these things called sin, disease, and death. But you accept the challenge of trying to overcome them instead of coming back home where they don't exist at all because they were only ever imaginary. It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. That statement only means something if you're in the mortal dream, the made-up concept of existence and the made-up sense of yourself as being separate, because divinely speaking, creation is the undivided and inseparable manifestation of all that God is, which includes you. And so creation is the extension of you as well. But if you have taken a stance of independence and you're choosing to see things the way you want to see them, then the infinite embodiment of what you are / God is becomes something you stand in receipt of. The very presence of your being becomes something separate from you that can't become separate from you, and therefore it can only be understood as God's gift to you. But you know what? The way the ego works, the way being is experienced when you have claimed independence from the Father, is that the gift, all of creation, is also seen as independent of the Father. Independent in this sense, the very scientific, physical sense that the universe has nothing to do with God at all. It's purely physical and started from a big bang. And everything about it is the natural evolution of matter and the way matter works. Now, the gift has become separated from the giver. Do you see that? Just as the one seeing the gift separated from the giver sees himself as separate from his source, thinking that he is the source of himself. and therefore has free will to be in whatever way he wishes, without accountability to any other part of creation. And it's called the capacity to be original and introduce something new into the human condition. And then this supposed capacity to be so independent that one can be so original that something valuably new can be introduced into the human condition becomes a source of pride. Now, when you conceive of yourself as self-created, as independent from God, as I said, it's an uneasy and uncomfortable experience. No one enjoys it, and everyone does want to escape from it. Everyone wants to become free from suffering. And the manifestation of that independent stance is called dis-ease, lack of ease. But when one accepts the independence as valid and finds himself experiencing dis-ease, lack of ease, discomfort, stress, and so on, and takes these on as a challenge to assert his authority or her authority as an independent authorizer, and convinces himself or herself that in so doing, it gives him or her greater credibility, so that it becomes a goal of great meaning. And one makes commitment to, quote, making his mark in the world, what he has made. And therefore takes pleasure in the suffering experience and the overcoming of it. That's not dis-ease, that is sin. When one takes pleasure, finds gratification, finds meaning in the dream and the overcoming of it by independent means, that is sin. And I'm going to be very frank with you. The fact that you're not awake means that you are all enjoying the challenge of bringing your own unique, independent viewpoint to bear upon life so as to overcome these problems. You are in sin. And so in this sense, the traditional church, the traditional religious teaching that says you're all sinners is true. But the way I have expressed it comes from another direction. It doesn't mean you're guilty, and it has nothing to do with punishment. It has to do with engaging in an activity that is erroneous, that you believe is valid, and which you are taking pleasure in engaging with. The healing of dis-ease and the healing of sin are different. Why? Because you don't enjoy dis-ease. And many times dis-ease is healed without your having to have any conscious awareness of what the specific belief was that was manifest in the form of disease. But sin can only be healed when the specific pleasure that you are taking in it is uncovered, so that you may see what you are doing and consciously abandon it. And until it is seen and consciously abandoned, sin will not spontaneously and miraculously disappear. This is very important to understand. In a moment. Again, I am not using the word sin with the traditional connotations. All it is the commitment to an erroneous belief that is done with pleasure and satisfaction that strokes one's ego, thereby apparently strengthening it. To know that this is what it is means that you do not have to worry about retribution, about ultimate penalties, because you're already experiencing ignorance of home. You're already experiencing ignorance of your connection with the Father. There's no further penalty, and it's not a penalty laid upon you. It's just that if you're not paying attention, you're likely to stub your toe. So that's all the extent, that is the extent of punishment, you might say, and it doesn't come from any outside source like the Father. Understanding this will make it easier for you to awaken, because you will not be existing in a state of fear of the Father's wrath because you have sinned. You see? And so you do not need to be distracted by fear in the process of dealing with sin. Yes, Michael.
You indicated that if you're not awake, then you're living in sin. Is it possible that, say you're at the bottom of the barrel and you're as surrendered as you can be at the bottom of the barrel? Is it possible at that point to still not be awake, but yet not be in sin? Because you're not enjoying anything at that point. Like you don't want any more.
No, you see, it's not the state of not enjoying anything at that point that undoes anything. It's the state of not enjoying anything and giving up.
Right.
And
right.
yielding to the Father.
So what I'm getting from this then is that if you're not awake, there's still a part of you that's not fully surrendered.
That is correct.
So that even though we've all been through the situation where we feel like we're totally surrendered, there is a part of us that's not totally surrendered. I mean, I believe that each one of us has hit the bottom of the barrel at one time or another. But yet here we are. You know, we were at the bottom of the barrel, but now we feel that we're not at the bottom of the barrel, even though in reality we're really nowhere.
That is correct. Yes, you will find that you come to the bottom of the barrel and you yield, and there is transformation, and there is regeneration. And that doesn't mean that you've risen in the barrel. And there is a level of peace and a level of
Healing.
Respite from struggle. And then
that seems to buoy
the
up
bottom of the barrel drops lower. And you find that the barrel was a deeper barrel than you thought.
And you feel better about yourself.
Hmm?
In other words, when I've hit the bottom of the barrel, and then things seem to clear up, and then I feel better about it.
That is correct.
And then I don't feel as surrendered as I was before, because I feel like, I've really made progress. And that kind of reinforces me not to surrender further. Do you see what I mean?
Yes,
because I feel better about myself.
Yes. And it's natural to come to a new level of peace and self-appreciation in the yielding. But then subtler levels of willfulness, subtler levels of mutually agreed upon beliefs have to be uncovered. And so the bottom of the barrel drops further, and you become, for lack of better words, more delicately attuned to the subtleties of the ego that you couldn't even perceive at what I will call grosser levels of ego structures. And when the bottom drops out again, you think, oh boy, and here I had thought I made so much progress. And evidently I haven't made any progress at all. But that is an illusion. You have made progress. And now there's further progress to be made. Further yielding, which now you are prepared to engage in, or better prepared to engage in, because you've already yielded up so much control and learned how valuable it has been not to be in control, that there's less resistance to abandoning even subtler levels of control that you heretofore were unaware you were utilizing.
Each time the bottom of the barrel drops down a little bit further, does that mean that your suffering has to be turned up more, or is it less, or is that all dependent on how you handle it? In other words, on what you choose as far as your way to perceive it.
Well, suffering is always equal to the amount of resistance to God you are introducing into the picture.
So it's a real-time thing. The more you resist, the more painful it feels. It's not like it's not like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It all depends on what's going on.
Of course.
In the moment. I see. Thank you.
Now, obviously, when you have claimed independence from the Father, you have narrowed your focus of attention down because you've abandoned the infinite view. Every step of awakening, you could say, is going to involve greater, fuller, more glorious views, I'll say, of reality. That part sounds very desirable to you. The part you may not be aware that you will want to avoid is the apparent responsibility to embrace it consciously, because it appears to you that it requires you to be more conscientiously conscious than you've ever been before. And that terrible word, work, looms its head. Well, if this is awakening and it's natural to my being, it shouldn't seem like work. Well, what's natural to you does seem like work if you have managed to push the wholeness of you out of the picture and the wholeness of your capacity to be aware out of your experience in favor of a much smaller dimension of everything. And so it does look like more work. It does look like not having any free time to just let go and relax because there's so much to be conscious of. And there's a tendency to want to fall back into fuzziness. Now, awakening is a process of learning. I mean, you're going to be changed from the way you're experiencing yourselves. You're going to know things that you had forgotten. And in that sense, you're going to relearn them. You're going to reincorporate them into your conscious experience of being. And in the reincorporating, you will seem to change. Learning means change. Now, those of you here at least, have been engaged consciously in what you have called an awakening process. And so you have been studying yourselves, you might say. You have been examining your motives. You have been examining your beliefs. You've been examining your concepts to see whether they're serving you. And then you have been willing to consider the possibility that none of your concepts and beliefs serve you well at all, and therefore you are willing to reach beyond them to the Father for His guidance. And so all the way along this apparent process of awakening, you have been faced with the correction of your ignorances by virtue of their being replaced with what I'm going to call clearer and clearer experiences of truth. You yourselves privately, individually, I'm going to say, have looked for those places in you which call for correction. And if you have made any valid progress, you have been willing to uncover not only your beliefs that promote dis-ease, but the false pleasures in illusion that you have been committed to for the purpose of self-satisfying ego building. And so you have all engaged in uncovering sin in yourselves. If you have made progress, it is because you have allowed what you would have kept secret to be uncovered to you so that you might see it clearly, so that you might make the distinction between illusion and truth, so that in the clarity of the distinction you can abandon your commitment to illusion. Right? Okay. For the most part, since we have been going through the course, and for the most part, as most students of the course have studied it, they have, and you have, taken this as a course of study about voluntary individual growth, as though the answer to all problems is an entirely private, individual affair, and that your doing that will be sufficient to change the world. And as a result, you've ended up still being private, still being separate from the world. And yet, we've discussed the fact that you are the salvation of the world. Today is sort of like when you take chemistry, you have 3 days a week of classwork and then 2 days a week of lab work. And so today is a little bit of lab work, okay? We've talked about involvement, haven't we? We've talked about being present with and for your brother. We've talked about turning back to the altar so that you might be infilled with the Father's perspective, which it's your birthright to be experiencing, because the Father's mind is your right mind. And what? The fact that in order for what the Father reveals to you to have meaning will occur only when your desire to know the truth is on your brother's behalf. You can't get the goodies from the Father for yourself privately.